Welcome to Coffee, Culture, and the Capital with Sophia and Greg. Well, hello everyone, and welcome back. We have been telling you all that we would have a podcast soon about some of the legislation that Newsom signed or some that he vetoed, and so we're going to do that today. But before we dive into everything, Greg, do you have your coffee?
I have coffee. It's boring, just decaf with a little flavoring of hazelnut.
Hazelnut. You need to go get some pumpkin flavoring for fall.
Oh, that's right. It's Thanksgiving time. I'm not a big fan of pumpkin pie, but I'm not. No. Apple pie, but pumpkin, not so much.
I do prefer apple over pumpkin, but I like pumpkin.
Hey, and before we get started, I wanted to compliment you on your beautiful new array, your background. For those of you who are on the radio, she's got little shelves with flowers, which I assume are real, and all kinds of books, and you even have your diploma up there. I need to have my diploma behind me, but
I got my diploma. That's my old soccer jersey from college. There's a
great
logo on it, but you can't see it in the photo. And then one of the pictures behind me it says Roe must go, let her live. And it's me and my friend Joy outside the Supreme Court the day of the hearings of the Dobbs, then later overturned Roe v. Wade.
That's great. You're there during a moment of history, so That's cool.
Crazy stuff. Yeah, so got my new background going. So if you're only listening, go ahead to the YouTube or the Facebook or our Twitter channel. You'll be able to see everything. But with that, Greg, when we were last talking legislation, we had updated everyone on what bills had passed the Senate and Assembly and were on Governor Newsom's desk. Governor Newsom has now it's officially all over because he's had to either sign or veto all the bills. So maybe we can start with some good news. What are some good bills that Governor Newsom did sign into law?
I got two bills that we are happy to see Governor Newsom sign. The first bill was a bill related to buying of children for sex. It was SB 1414. Surprisingly, and disappointingly, California only gave a person a crime of a misdemeanor if you solicited and bought a child for sex. And so this bill was going to increase the penalty, so it would be a felony. You'd get jail time. You would think that would be an easy thing to get passed. It was controversial. They changed it, minimized it along the way, but they ended up passing a modified version. You know, you have to only on the second time you solicit a minor, it becomes a felony. 16 and 17-year-olds are exempted from this. So there's still more room to do, but it's a positive bill. It goes in the right direction. Buying children for sex should be one of the worst crimes we have, and the punishment should equal that crime. And so that was a yes. So that was a good one. Next one was SB 268. This makes the rape of an intoxicated person a violent felony. Here's another crazy law that a violent felony is different than just a regular felony. There's more penalties associated with it. And if a rapist violently used force to rape someone, it was considered violent. But if that same rapist decided, well, I'm just going to drug my victim, give her slip something into her drink, get her intoxicated, and then I raped her, then it wouldn't be a violent felony. And that's just a ridiculous, unjust law that needed to be changed. And so now it's going to be a felony whether you violently rape somebody or whether you drug them first. So we can clap our hands to say that those bills were signed into law.
Amazing. And so the next bills we're going to go through, it's still good news, but they were bad bills. So,
Right. These are bills that we are fighting that Governor Newsom vetoed. Now, sometimes these bills are vetoed not because he agreed with us, but because they spent money that he didn't want to spend. The first bill was AB 2442. This bill was vetoed. It was going to expedite licenses for doctors who give them puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones to transition them from one gender to another, as though that's possible, which it's not, but it makes the kids look like a different gender. And here in the Capitol, they believe that's the best way to help a kid struggling with his gender identity. Tell the kid to trust his feelings and transition them. And so they wanted doctors interested in doing that to get expedited licenses. That was vetoed. And the reasoning the governor gave is that, we've already expedited other licenses. We can't expedite them all. And so he was a little concerned about this expediting process, especially when there's other people dying of diseases that maybe they should be preferred doctors treating them instead. So that was good.
On that one too, what we saw, this is kind of a copy of what we saw just like about 2 years ago, where they were expediting the license for doctors who agreed to performing abortions. And so it really shows where our state legislature, where their minds are at. And it's how can we push more abortions and how can we push more sterilizing and transing, and I say that with quotes, of children. So again, like Greg mentioned, Newsom did veto the bill for doctors who would sterilize kids with trans treatments, but not because he's against it, but because he's kind of saying, let's watch all the other expedited processes play out. But so Greg, the next one, you testified in opposition to for probably over like the past 2 years at least, right?
Yeah, this bill keeps coming back. Senator Minjavar wants to fight the epidemic we have of sexually transmitted diseases among young people. And she believes the solution is to make sure kids down into the 7th grade all have free access to condoms. And so this bill was going to make sure that schools and junior high couldn't say no to handing out condoms to, 12, 13, 14-year-olds, as well as making sure that high schoolers have a spot at school where they can go get a condom for free. So this bill died. It was going to cost millions of dollars, and it wasn't in the budget. And that's why Governor Newsom vetoed it. But I testified over and over explaining that, first of all, condoms don't help with certain sexually transmitted diseases like syphilis because it's skin-to-skin contact. Condoms are a poor solution, even if you wear them properly. And the other problem is, if you're ever going to solve this problem, you have to encourage kids to not have sex with multiple partners, right? You have to change their behavior. And that's something the schools seem to be unwilling to do. And if you hand out free condoms, what you're saying is, hey, this was going to protect you from getting a disease. And it's a terrible, non-foolproof way to protect kids. And actually, it just encourages a free-for-all with kids having sex, thinking there's no real consequences for having multiple partners. And so glad to see that die again. Okay. The last bill that Governor Newsom vetoed that we were happy about was AB 2490. This bill was going to provide grants to hospital emergency rooms so that they could provide abortions on demand. It would really turn every hospital emergency room into an abortion clinic. So I guess that cost too much, and it was vetoed. So I was glad to see that.
All right, so those were our 5 good news. 2 good bills passed, 3 bad bills vetoed.
Right.
But now on to the bad news. But also, I just want to take a second to recognize that we had good news for you guys, because I know we constantly sit here and we're telling you about the crazy and the nonsense and the bad things that are happening. But there are good things happening, and your voices are being heard, and we are pushing back so that evil just doesn't easily prevail in the state of California. So I just wanted to make sure you guys all recognize that, and that good things do happen here in California as long as we keep fighting for them. Um,
Right.
but
Absolutely.
that a couple bad bills. 729, Greg, SB 729. This bill is just beyond ridiculous. And so we've talked about it a lot, but let's dive into it.
Right. This is going to be very expensive for everyone. IVF treatment, in vitro fertilization, is the process of taking sperm and eggs and fertilizing the beginning of a human life in a petri dish, and then putting that human being into a mother to grow. And this bill, that kind of treatment, in order to have kids, is very expensive. It's $30,000 a pop, and this bill is going to require the insurance companies cover it. And which means if you make every insurance company have that in their insurance plan, that spreads the cost to everybody else. So if you think insurance is expensive now your policy is going to have to include in vitro fertilization. And it's not just the cost. What you're doing is you're treating human beings like a product. And many of these little babies that are created are either frozen, don't ever make it into the womb, and die. And so it is a inhumane way that we are now putting more life at risk and killing more little children at the earliest stages. But that in alone is bad. But on top of that, it's redefining what it means to be infertile. Like, who gets these services? Well, you would think people who have a hard time having children. They have some infertility issue. Either the guy does his sperm count's low, or the woman, something's wrong with her reproductive system and they aren't able to get pregnant. Well, not only will those folks have access to IVF, so will anyone who can't have a child. That includes single people. If you are single, you will now be designated as infertile. I mean, it means single, not having sex. You're celibate. You are designated as infertile, meaning if you hire someone to have your child, your insurance policy will now cover IVF for that surrogate that you're hiring. And this is a big business here in California. People buy children by simply going to a sperm bank, or they go to an egg donor location. You get an egg, and you fertilize it with your own sperm, and then you hire someone to carry your child. And now we are all going to be on the hook for paying for that. So and this is also includes same-sex couples, two guys who want a child, but obviously they can't produce a biological child. Now will be able to go to IVF and have their insurance pay for this treatment and get a child for themselves. You're really turning children into a commodity that you're buying. No longer will families be about creating an atmosphere where kids can thrive, meaning each kid gets a mom and a dad. Every kid needs a mom and a dad, right? That's being eliminated with this technology, and now we're all paying for it. It's always been legal here in California, but now everybody's insurance policy is going to be forced to pay for it. Previously, it's only you had to have a lot of money in order to go through these treatments. Now you're normalizing it. So there's big societal issues with this, and who knows what our culture is going to look like when the family is really being blown up.
Absolutely. And I do want to note, if you want to hear more about where California Family Council stands and what our research has been on IVF, head to californiafamily.org. You'll see our webinars tab. We did a webinar with Katie Faust, with them before us. Emma Waters at the Heritage Foundation. Jonathan Keller, the California Family Council president, was the host of that webinar. And it's an hour-long webinar diving into IVF, and all the issues that come with it. So definitely go check that out. If you're not sure even where you stand, go learn a little bit on that. But yes, crazy bill redefining infertility is absolute insanity. So, and Newsom signed that one, SB 729. Greg, AB 1825, limiting the ability of public libraries to protect kids from sexually explicit material. What is going on with AB 1825?
Well, you probably heard, parents upset, especially in school libraries, kids being exposed to ever increasing sexual content, whether it's graphic photographs of people having sex, or novels, or books, graphically talking about violent sex acts, really pornographic type writing that you would typically find in an adult bookstore is making its way into libraries. And if anybody's ever been to a library, you have a children's section that is curated, meaning they keep adult books out of the little kids section, right? And libraries make judgments and say, this is not age appropriate. I'm going to put this over into the adult sections. It's not for kids. Well, this particular bill bans the ability of local public libraries to limit adult content, even sexual content. You can't limit it by age, right? Now, which means, and this happened in Fresno. There was a local library there. It was LGBT month. There was a particular book being displayed during Pride Month. In the children's section, it was a book about sex for kids, and it was full of cartoon pictures of people actually having sex in all kinds of situations. There was a local parent who saw this and was appalled, and they called their local supervisor who oversees, county libraries, and they made a decision. Hey, let's put this off to the side and only have this book available if a parent approves. It seems like a reasonable solution. The book was not banned. It was just put aside. Well, this bill is to combat local communities from doing that. They will no longer be able to put books aside for adults that are, even if the local community doesn't want their children to see them. And they call this book the Freedom to Read Act. There's another bill. It must be going around the country because another one is going to be passed with the same name in New Jersey. And it's all to prevent local communities from limiting what children see out of concern that certain material is harmful to kids. Most people, if you ask them, should kids be able to view whatever they want? Everybody knows that's not true. We don't freak out when we don't let kids go see rated R movies. But for some reason, library books seem to be off limits for folks here in California. So what this means practically is you are no longer be able to just send your kids into the library kids section and pick out a book like I did with my 3 kids. The library is no longer going to be a safe place for children now that this bill has been passed and signed.
Crazy things going on with that.
Right.
And also, I do want to note, all of these bills we're talking about, you might be like, hey, I've listened to all of the podcasts, so I'm up to date on all these bills. I know exactly what you're talking about. Or this might be the first podcast of ours you ever watched, and you're like, okay, these are interesting. Where can I learn more and all of that? At californiafamily.org, we have a story that goes through all these bills, but all these bills we're talking about, we've also written many articles and have stories on them. We've put videos of us testifying and things like that. So if you head to californiafamily.org and you go, there's like a little search section on our website. If one of these bill numbers you want to learn more about, search that bill number, and any article that we've written about it will pop up. So you can definitely check out more there. And we can even link the article that talks about these bills. That will be linked in the description of this podcast. You can check it out there. But with that, we still have more bills to go through. So, Greg, we have another bill surrounding this whole transgender ideology, erasure of women, erasure of biological truth, and that's AB 2319.
Right. This is another one of those training bills, which the legislature has been doing for years. Anytime the legislature or the state government licenses a particular profession, doesn't matter who it is, they can require those professions to do something to renew their license, including getting training. And so this particular bill, AB 2319, is going to mandate implicit bias training for healthcare workers who work in hospitals that provide maternity care. The training would include recognition of intersecting identities, including but not limited to non-binary persons and persons of the transgender experience, and a multiple layer of potential biases that could come into play. And I'm reading from the bill language right there. So what does it mean to be biased towards the transgender experience? Right? Well, if somebody comes into the hospital and they say they're a man and they're about to give birth, right? That's a person who identifies as the opposite sex. And how is a nurse supposed to deal with that, right? Well, they're going to get all kinds of training to make sure that they eliminate these biased beliefs. And the biased belief would be that only women give birth. In the legislators' minds, there's a way to look at gender that's true and honest, which is everybody gets to choose whether you're a male or female. Males and females both give birth. Males and females both have wombs, right? That's truth, according to the legislature. If you don't believe that, then you're biased. And this law is going to mandate you be retrained to think the way the government wants you to think. It really is transgender indoctrination, and it's going to put all of you folks out there who think only women have wombs and women give birth and only mothers have children. That shows you have implicit bias, and that will have to be trained out of you to make anybody who goes into a maternity ward that's transgender comfortable. It's all about making them feel comfortable, and you have to abandon your own beliefs to. So this is really put Christians under the gun. They've got to stay true, stay strong, and not be forced to give up their religious beliefs, even though the state is forcing that upon you. This is happening in school districts with teachers. I was just speaking to a teacher this last week in my community. They are being forced the same type of training. It's happening with pharmacists and a whole range of medical professionals, doctors. Everybody's being retrained to think the way the government wants you to do. Resist, right? You have the First Amendment protects your right to practice your faith in your job. They cannot make you deny things you believe because of your religious faith. And so you got to stay true.
Absolutely.
And if anybody gets in any trouble, we got attorneys who can help you out.
Yes, be bold enough to stand up for the truth, especially when it's as common sense as there's only males and females, and we know the biological differences. Right. But with that, I would say 2 years ago, we saw a surplus of abortion bills come out of the state capitol. I believe Governor Newsom 2 years ago signed over a dozen pro-abortion bills. Yet they keep coming up with more. It hasn't ended. They seem to every year. It seems to get a little bit less because they have done so many pro-abortion bills, but every year we're seeing a couple come through. And so that this year we saw AB 2085 when this would strip city councils of their right to reject abortion clinics. And so we actually helped some Hispanic pastors come up to testify from Southern California, from Fontana, to testify in opposition to this. So, Greg, what's the scoop with AB 2085?
Yeah, as most folks I think know, cities have the right to decide what kind of businesses are located in their community. If you don't want a strip club downtown, if you don't want a marijuana shop, if you don't want other particular entities like abortion clinics in your community, the locals have the right to decide, hey, this is right for us, this isn't right for us. So the local community with its zoning laws can approve or disapprove of a particular business coming to town if they don't think it would be something that would benefit their town. So there are communities who said no to abortion clinics. Fontana, actually Beverly Hills got involved with stopping a third trimester abortion clinic from coming to town. I know, Sophia, you went down there and was involved in a protest of such a clinic that eventually did not get in. Well, this has made the legislators up here pretty mad that there's a way to stop an abortion clinic from coming to their town. Well, this bill is to more or less make abortion clinics almost impossible to stop. And so all they got to do is follow through on some specific requirements for their business, and they can get in because they don't even have to go through CEQA, which is a environmental rules that many businesses have to adhere to. They get an exemption. Why? Well, because California thinks abortion is one of the most fundamental rights, and nothing should stop anyone. No city should ever stop the availability of an abortion clinic set up in your town. So it's really the state taking local control away from folks. And so that bill passed, sadly.
Now we got two bills left, and both
Two bills.
kind of are on this whole trans ideology. SB 957, Greg, what are we seeing happen through this bill?
Well, it's a new law that mandates that the California Department of Health collect and report demographic data on the sexual orientation and gender identity of all of us. They get this information from when we all go to get a checkup, and you have to fill out the forms ahead of time. You write your name, and they want to know your age and their sex. They're going to start asking you your sexual orientation and your gender identity, and that information will then be passed along to the state, because the state wants to know all that information so they can use it to justify additional laws. And so this is more reporting, mandating that the health department actually collect it. So
I go to Kaiser for my doctor. And Greg, as you were reading through this, that just made me think of this tweet I put out from March of this year. Was going just for a normal physical at Kaiser, and they sent me one of these. This was obviously before this bill was signed into law. Kaiser, everyone, if you're not familiar, Kaiser has been a front leader in this whole pushing trans ideology. But they sent me this little social health review that I had to take, or didn't have to take. They kept saying, please do this, and I wasn't doing it. It was just like on the Kaiser app. And then
right.
I went in for my physical, and the doctor was like, oh, it looks like there's a couple of things you didn't fill out. And so again, they weren't forcing me at the time to fill it out, but I'm like, well, if you guys are going to keep bugging me about it, I'll finally fill it out. And so, yeah, one of the questions is sexual orientation. It's the sexual orientation and gender identity questionnaire. And it says, what are your pronouns? And there's so many different options. And it's, do you think of yourself as female, male, transgender male, other, choose not to disclose, non-binary, questioning, or gender fluid. So I clicked other and said you can only be male or female. You know what I am. And then for pronouns, I also clicked other and said no such thing as a preferred pronoun. You know, I'm a woman. And then it says what sex was originally listed on your birth certificate, to which I clicked female/other. And for other, I put the sex that I am. You can't change that. So if they're going to keep bugging you about filling it out, you might as well have some fun with it, which is what I chose to do. But it's honestly, it wasn't even fun I had. It was common sense. I needed them to know. And so I went in for another physical recently, and they didn't ask me to fill it out again because I don't know if they loved my answers, but say the truth. Let them know. I mean, who knows? Maybe you have a doctor that like agrees with you on this nonsense, but feels like they can't say anything, and they see that you fill out a questionnaire that's like, I'm a female and you know that. I can't change that. And maybe you'll get into the office and they'll be like, I agree with you. Like, you never know. That didn't happen to me, but if they're going to force you to fill it out, give them the truth.
Crazy.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, did you have to say whether you're a male or a female?
Yeah, that was like one of the questions. Like, it wasn't even like,
But in the state, it's all the same. I mean, the word male refers to your identity, not to your biology. So they're going to have to come up with a different word to tell the doctor you have male biology. If they don't want to use the word male to say that.
Yeah, it's beyond ridiculous. Crazy stuff we're seeing. And AB 1810. Ooh, this is a fun bill. Crazy stuff. Greg?
Are you testified against this one?
Yes, I did. This one, AB 1810. If you follow me on social media, you're probably annoyed with how much I've talked about this bill at this point. But this one was going to guarantee, well, it guarantees birth control and menstrual products for females in women's prisons. Okay. CFC has no problem that women in prisons have the access to the menstrual products they need. If they need tampons, pads, whatever it is, we don't have a problem with them having access to that. Our first issue with the bill was that every time it said female or women, it was crossed out and said persons, menstruators. So again, they want to change the language in the law to remove any sex-specific language. And then our other main issue with AB 1810 by Assemblymember Isaac Bryan is that this bill, it says, one little tiny line of the bill says that women will have access to emergency contraception in prison. Okay, put aside how you might feel about emergency contraception. Don't put aside how you feel, whether you're okay with it or not okay with it. Why? Think about it like this. Why would a woman need emergency contraception in a women's prison? It takes two to get pregnant. It takes a male and a female. Thus, the only reason they would need emergency contraception in women's prisons are because there are male inmates in women's prisons. And this was due to Senator Scott Wiener's bill from 2020, SB 132, which allows you to go to prison based off of your gender identity and not your actual sex. And you don't have to have surgeries done. You don't have to be identifying. You can just get arrested and be like, oh, hey, sorry, I'm a woman, so send me to the women's prison. And this bill, AB 1810, they say, oh, it's a great bill. Women get the menstrual products they need. No, it's covering up the fact that women are being raped in prison right now in California due to Senator Scott Wiener's bill.
Right. Yeah, and it was emergency contraception. It was all contraception. They have access to contraception. Now, why? Why do they need that? It is really a cover-up. Otherwise, we start seeing children born, right, in these prisons, and they don't want that out, right? They don't want that. Why do we separate men from women? Why? We know what'll happen if you stick them together in the same prison cell, yep. Right? And that's exactly what is happening. And you know, it's what a horrific tragedy. We are going to keep bringing it up. every time men are abusing women in prison because we stuck them in the same cells, it is like we're not. It's talk about what is it? Not unusual punishment, or what's banned in the Constitution, right? What's the first word? Can't remember. It's not torturous.
Cruel and unusual punishment.
Cruel. It is so cruel. It is cruel.
Absolutely. I mean, also let's think about it like this. Everyone knows it's just kind of like one of those known things that when a man goes to prison, if he did something to children specifically, but also to women, so if he sexually assaulted, beat up, killed a woman or a child, guess what happens when he goes to that prison? The other inmates, they don't put up with that. They just don't. That's what happens. That's the reality of it. Like, it's one of those known prison things that if you are a man that did something to women or children, when you show up to prison and the other inmates find out that you're there because you hurt or sexually assaulted or killed a child, they don't put up with that. You get beaten up like that. And I'm not saying whether that's okay or not. I'm just saying that is what's the known thing that happens. So now you're a man that has raped children, raped women. You're a sexual assaulter. You get caught. You get arrested. Oh, I don't have to go to the male's prison where I'm going to get beat up. I can go to the women's prison and continue raping women. I mean, I'm not being dramatic here when I say that. That's the reality of what is happening. So to what Greg was saying, that is cruel and unusual punishment to these women, regardless of what you think about women in prison and whatever they did to get there. They don't deserve to be raped and housed with a male.
Absolutely.
So.
Well, folks, sorry to end it on a negative note, but you got to be aware. These kind of things we have to expose and to call our legislators out for voting for them. We can't continue to vote for the same people when you know what they're doing and what they're voting for. Right? Look at the specific bills. Do not listen just to what they say they're for and listen to their rhetoric, right? It is their bills that have long-lasting effects on your community. If you want things to change, you got to change who you vote for based on what they vote for. That's my little spiel.
Yes, and amen. I couldn't agree more. Well, with all that, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, californiafamily.org. Check out the articles. Search the bill number if there's a specific bill you want to learn more about on our website. You'll see all the articles about it. But that is it. Oh, we have a fun event coming up at the Capitol. So be there Monday, November 4th, 6 p.m., the steps of the Capitol. We will also be live streaming it if you're not able to make it, so you can tune into our Facebook page for the live stream of that. We are having a prayer vigil. We are going to be worshiping and praying on the steps of the Capitol. There are people coming to pray from across the state of California, from Southern, from Central, from Northern California. And we are just going to ask God to just honestly have mercy on us. I mean, something my pastor says quite often is, don't give us the president, don't give us the senators, the assembly members that we deserve. Because based off what the state of California is doing, we don't deserve great leaders when it comes to how we've left God, how we've removed God from the picture. But we are going to have that night at the Capitol to really just pray for California, pray for the nation, pray for the election, pray for our elected leaders that are attacking children and the unborn to get exposed and removed from office, and that if they do stay on, pray that they stay up every single night with conviction about what they're doing and have a change of heart, and that God changes their hearts and minds, and that they come out and try to undo all the bad they've done. But I'm excited for it to just kind of take time on the steps of the Capitol and have that like holy moment with Jesus and prayer and reverence to him. So be there.
Should be good. I'm looking forward to it. In these times, we need to put our full trust in God. All right. Government can get discouraging, but he has put us here to be salt and light. And so we need courage. People need to know about God and his righteousness, his forgiveness, his willingness to restore and bring us back. But we have to return to him. If we don't return to him, this culture will fall darker and fall farther and farther away. And so let's play for repentance and to return to the Lord. So I'm excited.
All right. Well, we'll see you all there, and we'll catch you on the next podcast episode.